Good evening. I now call to order the regular board meeting of the Park Ridge Park District Board of Park Commissioners. Today is Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. The time is 7:02, and we are meeting virtually due to the COVID crisis. May we please have roll call?
Commissioner Coyne?
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here.
Commissioner LeDuc? Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here. Thanks, Mary Ann. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda. If anyone has anything they'd like to amend, add, or delete to the current agenda.
Not from here.
Hearing none. Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to the public comment section portion of the meeting on any non-agenda items. And I will turn it over to our great staff at Wohlers Hall. I was thinking, where do we meet? Wohlers Hall, to see if there is anyone in attendance there or anyone with any items they'd like to comment on streaming from Facebook Live.
We need to give it a minute for Facebook Live to catch up with us. So
there is nobody at the boardroom at Wohlers, though.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. We'll wait a moment for the Facebook Live delay and if there's any public comments on non-agenda items.
Okay, there are no public comments.
Thanks, Margaret. We'll now move on to the approval of minutes. I move to approve the special board meeting of Wednesday, February 19th, 2020, the regular board meeting minutes of Thursday, February 20th, 2020, and the regular board meeting minutes of Thursday, March 5th, 2020, as well as the special board meeting of Saturday, March 21st, 2020. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. May I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner O'Donnell was first to the punch for the second.
Can I ask who just chimed in the call?
Commissioner LeDuc, sorry, my first attempt didn't work a few minutes ago, so I just tried again.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Commissioner LeDuc. May we now have a voice vote, please? All in favor?
I have
Aye.
a correct.
Oh, you do.
Me,
Sorry,
I
Cindy.
On the February 20th set of minutes, I think it was page 6 in our board package, when we talked about the oath and task force recommendation and discussion. I felt it important to say that there was consensus from the commissioners that nothing be included in the information that we send to the community would be things that were not budgeted for. That wasn't included in the review. Does that make sense?
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction to point out because I know this board spent some significant time talking that was our preference. So thanks.
Is that enough to go on, Mary Ann?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other changes or corrections or items to discuss in the meeting minutes? On that note, may we take a voice vote as amended? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Now I will turn it over to Executive Director Mountcastle, who's been working very hard during this unprecedented time, along with the rest of her leadership team. So we'll turn it over to you, Executive Director Mountcastle.
Thank you, President Harrington. Yes, I just wanted to give a brief overview of activities and ongoing issues and things, challenges that have come up on our unprecedented situation with COVID-19. We are going on 3 weeks since we had to close facilities, programs, and parks due to this COVID-19 situation and subsequently the governor's order. Everybody knows, I would assume by now, that this order has been extended to April 30th. So we will be continuing our closures of the facilities, programs, and parks, portions of the parks until that time. Certainly has been, for everybody, not just the park district, the community members and, everybody in our country and, all over the world, challenging and unprecedented times. We continue to operate the district as we are deemed as an essential service. And so the majority of staff are teleworking, or some are limited amount are reporting to the district, of course, while complying with the social distancing requirements under the order. We're challenged, and the staff has been doing an amazing job balancing, providing the safe working environment to continue essential tasks and projects, while making sure that preparations are being made for our very busy summer season coming up. Doing everything possible to make sure we're ready to welcome back our valued customers to the Park District. I want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the closure of parks. It's a very difficult, or I should say the park amenities. Very difficult thing for all of us, because I think we've quickly found out how much of a outlet and a wonderful source of, helping our mental state and keeping us healthy that the parks are. So that has become very apparent. We would ask the public to continue their social distancing in the parks and no group gatherings. This is not a park district order. This is an order from the governor. I wanted to take a minute just to clarify so people understand what's allowed and what's not. Here are the things that you can do. You can walk, you can run, and you can bike. You can also fly a kite. You can enjoy nature. You can participate in activities with 1 or 2 other people from your household. These type of activities would be playing catch, kicking a soccer ball back and forth, etc. The things that you cannot do are gathering groups outside of those in your household. You cannot play contact sports. You cannot use any of the district amenities, and I'm going to list them just so everybody's clear. The playgrounds, the basketball courts, the tennis courts, the skate park, pickleball courts, volleyball courts, or the dog parks. Dog park. We have been working with the City of Park Ridge Police, and they are trying to educate the public as well as we are. And we've had several issues with compliance. We have no problems when it's a rainy day, but a day like today, there are several issues, and we are getting calls, the commissioners are getting calls, and we just can't reiterate enough, the safety and how serious this is with the concerns of, this being airborne, this COVID-19 being airborne. It stays on surfaces, meaning the playgrounds and the basketball hoops and anything you touch. We've had several complaints again today. Groups of kids golfing, playing baseball and more, breaking the lock on the tennis courts, taking zip ties off basketball nets. We can all do better than this, even though it's very difficult. We need people to call the Park Ridge Police non-emergency number. That number is 847-318-5252. 847-318-5252. We are hoping we do not have to shut down the parks. We're all in this together. We want the public to continue to use our parks wisely, to take a break, get some fresh air, and blow off some steam. So, the police have really tried to be patient and work with, the residents on this, but they will and have the authority to cite people, write tickets, and arrest if necessary. And let's just not get there. I've seen a couple parks that there's no problems, but there's other ones that people are just not complying. So we will be monitoring that. I thought it was important to go through that in detail. Any questions from the commissioners on that? I have some other things I wanted to comment on.
It's 7:09. Commissioner Leach just came on the line, so just wanted to, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail, I really appreciate, this is Commissioner Harrington, I appreciate that greater amount of detail that you just spoke about in terms of the ways in which we can use our parks and the ways in which we cannot due to the governor's shelter-in-place order. I think it would be really helpful if we continue to push that message out via social media and on our website.
Sure.
And I know that each of us commissioners are trying to do our parts as well to spread the word. Mm-hmm. I very much value partnership of the police department as well, knowing that they are enforcing a governor's shelter-in-place order for the state. Mm-hmm. It's not typical times, not normal times, so I know we value their partnership in helping us with this as well. So thanks for your work and your collaboration with them.
Certainly, and we will continue to, as the weather gets warmer, of course, it's going to be more challenging for everybody. I just wanted to mention our attorney just got a hold of me. He's trying to call in, but he's getting busy signals. The circuits are busy, so I know it's been a challenge for people with that, working from home, et cetera. I just, finally I wanted to, just touch on the fact that the staff, I'm really proud of all of the staff of the district. It's humbling to see how people come together in very difficult situations. We are learning a whole new way of operating, through this teleworking and I think been on more conference calls and video meetings and et cetera. So we did have to make some difficult staff decisions this week. And I mentioned that because I really want to stress that our staff is our most important asset and we're one team. And that we are so helpful and plan that these are temporary decisions. We want to be open as soon as possible. One of our challenges that we are facing that, this is just, of course, unprecedented, but, never in the history for park districts, we're a little different than some other governments. Everybody has their own challenges. Our challenge is that we rely on fees and charges for 50% of our revenues. So when we're not operating, we do not have 50% of our revenues. We're going to get a little bit more into that in the financial projections, but this could be a large financial setback depending on how long it is that we are closed. We fully anticipate that we're going to recover. So I do want to say that. I'm very optimistic if we can get open in the summer and get going, that we will recover, but we will take a setback. So we have to look at all areas of our operations. Unfortunately, in the current relief bills that have been coming at us and being analyzed by all the attorneys and everybody that we have at our disposal to help us through these things, the unemployment consultants, we have been in more webinars and more calls about this as it changes daily. The Family First Corona Act, the FFCRA, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that I know you are, with your own industries, and the CARE Act. Today we got the Department of Labor is the one interpreting these laws, and they came out with changes yesterday, so it continues to fluctuate. And there are going to be supposedly other versions of this that come out. But at this point, from what we know, and again, the CARE Act is currently still being analyzed. It's an over 800-page bill. There's a very minimal relief to park districts in this bill. There's no relief right now for financial recovery from loss of revenue or to cover wages. So that is putting us in the predicament we're at right now with the staff. I have communicated with the attorney, Jason Ansel, met at IAPD today, and he said that they are working very closely with NRPA to monitor any changes and the fourth potential relief bill. There will be a coordinated response at some point, and he said it's not the time right now, but I will be asking the commissioners to reach out to our legislators if you're comfortable, and I will have a sample letter when the time comes for that, and that could be any day now. So we are working behind the scenes on that as well to try to get the district some relief. As I said, I think it's very evident in the past few weeks when people can't take advantage of our services that we certainly are an essential service for the well-being of people's lives. So we look forward to when we reopen, and in the meantime, staff is all available, to the public, to the board, and we're getting back to people through emails and phone calls, and there's, like I said, limited people at the district. I believe we will recover from this, and we will be adjusting to a new normal, whatever that will be. So that's really, I wanted to update you on some of the things behind the scenes. The staff is, they're going to give their reports and probably give you a little bit more insight into what's happening and what they're preparing for. But, as I told the staff, we have to balance the fact that, we want to be able to be here for the residents when we reopen, and we expect that will be the expectation. So we are trying to do what we can to make that happen. Any questions on that right now? Okay. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the Oakton Park and Facility Public Engagement Process update. Oh, she turned it to me. Harmony, President Harrington, there is a motion under your report. I think we skipped through that, unless you just intended for me to go first.
I was really interested to hear your relevant
Okay.
after Mount Russell, but I am happy to go back to that portion.
Okay.
All right. Let's. I'd like to move to cancel the Thursday, April 16th, 2020 regular.
We lost you.
This actual.
Can you? We are losing you in and out. Can you repeat the motion?
I'm sorry, this is Cindy. I can't hear.
I move to cancel.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Technical difficulties.
I believe so. We can hear you now. We heard.
Great. I move to cancel the Thursday, April 16th, 2020 regular board meeting and call for a special board meeting to be held on Thursday, April 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the same meeting location. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. And
Can you repeat that, Harmony? You just cut out.
Sure. I believe that we are rescheduling this meeting due to some staff conflict. And so I appreciate. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I wasn't. This is Cindy. I get little bits and pieces of what you're saying.
Yeah, we're having a little harder time. We're having a little hard time with Harmony going in and out, I believe. I can fully hear Cindy.
Yeah, it's been going in and out for me too. It's Commissioner Leduc.
Okay. So Harmony, I'll go ahead and the reason that the staff asked President Harrington to consider moving this meeting back a week is due to the ability that we want to have to give you as best of a financial picture from the March reports and to close out March. The finance department has been especially challenged with a number of extra tasks due to the closing. So that's the reason that we're wanting to move that meeting. Are you back, Harmony?
I am. Harmony.
Okay. I just explained the reasoning behind. I don't know if you were on for that. It has to do with like closing out the month of March and getting that as accurate as possible. And so the finance department was asking for another week.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about moving the meeting or any potential conflicts or concerns?
This is Cindy. I don't hear anything.
Cindy, you don't hear us right now?
I can't hear anybody.
We can hear you, Cindy. Can everybody announce themselves to see if we can hear you?
Robert Leach, Miss John Tunnel.
Harmony Harrington.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner LeDuc?
I don't know if you can hear me, but Commissioner Ludick's fine with that.
Yep.
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear us? Can everybody hear me?
You just keep making
Everything's cutting in
really
and out.
bad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it cuts out for me.
Yeah.
Same here, Commissioner Leduc.
Same.
All right.
This is Commissioner Coyne. I can't hear anything except a couple words every 10 seconds.
Okay, this is Cindy. I can't hear anything again.
All right. Maybe can we take a pause? I don't know what we can do.
We can take a break.
Let's take a break.
Hold on 1 second. I'm getting, I think, an email from the attorney.
Yeah, I'm with Cindy. I can't hear anybody but Gail and Marianne. And I hear Cindy, but I hear nothing of Harmony or anybody else. Yeah.
I can't always hear Gail. It cuts in and out.
Yeah, Gail cuts in and out. Oh, good God.
Do we all sign out and sign back in?
Perhaps, yeah. Let's try that. How about that? Everybody hang up and call back in.
So let's take a little break right now. It's 7:25. Everybody call back at 7:30. Okay?
Okay.
We'll try.
Okay, we'll call IT in the meantime.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Go ahead.
Right. We now resume the regular board meeting of the Park Ridge Park District Board of Park Commissioners. Today is still Thursday, April 2nd, 2020, and the time 7:33. We were discussing the motion to cancel the Thursday, April 16th, 2020 regular board meeting and call for a special board meeting to be held on Thursday, April 23rd. We had taken any comments, and we were moving to a roll call vote. Marianne, can we proceed with the vote?
Sure. Commissioner Coyne?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner LeDuc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Commissioner O'Donnell, sorry, I got kicked off the call.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, I'm sorry, it was Commissioner O'Donnell. We're doing the motion. Is that fine with you? Yes?
It is. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Commissioner Tunnel?
No, just because it's my 15th wedding anniversary, and I would be in trouble if I said yes. So just based on that fact.
Thank you. Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. All right, the motion has passed, and I did also skip our attorney report. Dirk, I know you've joined us, so is any updates for the group?
Well, I think that I listened to Gail's original summary. I think she touched all the bases in terms of legal. We've crossed the FFCRA. We've talked about the CARES Act. I know that to the extent possible, we've sent staff the information on how to at least try and code whatever costs we have about fighting COVID so we can seek recovery from FEMA and IEMA. If we can do that, that takes a long time, but might as well try for that. Otherwise, staff's doing everything they can possibly do at this time to be prepared to provide services when we're allowed to do that, and people will want to do that. It's going to be some interesting literature about things like health, fitness centers and health spas. People may never want to return en masse for some time to come, and we'll just have to prepare for that as we go forward.
Thanks, Dirk. Certainly, there will be a new normal. So now moving on, Gail, I know you were going to be updating the board on the Oakton Park and Facility public engagement process.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to touch on this. Obviously, we have canceled all public meetings, and we had 2 public meetings. We were also set to send out a survey. We were in full force of this process, as we all knew, and attending several, supposed to be attending several other community group meetings when everything came to a halt. And we stopped the survey from going out. We do not, of course, we didn't have the public meetings. We've stopped all action, I would say, on this process because it is the staff's feeling, and I know I talked to at least one of you about this, that this is certainly not the time to be going to the public with a large ask for a financial, financial ask. We don't think it's the time at all. And so we are, we have basically halted the process. We can certainly pick up discussions about that with the board when we come back, when we're back in full force. But I just wanted to let you know that that was our intent in case anybody had anything to say about that or any other feeling about that. Okay. So we can move on to the marketing portion of my report. All I will just say is that Margaret has been unbelievable and responding to several of the comments and changes and challenges from the website, from all the different sites, and she's kept up with that and all of our messaging and continues to. We are going to have some new signs that we're developing that are give some graphics and visuals of the do's and don'ts in the parks. Those will be here at some point in the near, what day? Monday at the latest. So hopefully that'll help try to spread that message as well. But any other questions? Margaret is here if you have any questions. Okay. Moving on to the human resources report. Again, it's in your packet. Very brief, as Diane, all of us, I should just blanket it. I think I did at the beginning. This team has been amazing, and I couldn't have done everything we've had to do in the last couple of weeks without them. Diane specifically has been interpreting these laws with me and on several calls with the attorneys and all during the weekend, and just as the laws change and trying to do the best thing for the district in terms of moving forward in this challenging time, temporary, hopefully, with our employees. So, Diane, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
No, nothing to add, Gail. Just challenging times.
Yeah. Any questions for Diane at this time? Okay. That ends my report.
Thanks, Executive Director Mountcastle. We move on to the report section of the meeting, and with Finance beginning first, Commissioner LeDuc.
Hi, this is Commissioner LeDuc, and I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis.
Thank you, Commissioner LeDuc. My written report begins, it's on page 20 of the PDF file, which is labeled page 19. One thing I'd like to highlight, so basically as of the reports as of February, everything was cooking along, continuing our strong performance as we're looking at ending 2019. And I do want to update that or highlight that the audit fieldwork has been completed. We did actually receive the draft already. So one of my next tasks will be to begin finalizing all of the annual report for 2019. But the one thing I did want to highlight is that there hasn't been a lot of change since the December 2019 update that was in your last monthly report packet. The biggest change was capital expenditures that were incurred. But on an operating basis, we continued to see the strong performance we expected. But I do want to point out that in light of the COVID-19 situation, rather than doing a transfer to the capital fund as of the end of the fiscal year 19, I'd recommend to allow greater operating fund flexibility by not doing the transfer as of the end of 2019 and reassessing fund balance targets during the 21 budget process. And that if excess of fund balance targets are available, we could do the transfer to the capital fund at that time. Otherwise, we'll talk, and I know later in our agenda we have to talk about the capital projects that could be looked at being cut or deferred. So if anyone has any questions about that.
This is Commissioner LeDuc. I just wanted to thank you for your hard work in a difficult time and for the updates. I had a question though. Is that something we would, if we were to not move not transfer the capital funds at this point, is that something that there needs to be a motion on, or is that something that you can just do under your authority?
So it's part of our fund balance policy, and I would, I guess, ask the Attorney Price if he has any comment on this. The fund balance policy really talks to the targets in the budget cycle, and we identify, what we think it will be for the fiscal year end, and it gets enacted when we kind of close out our books. So
if we're deviating from policy, I would like it confirmed by a resolution passed by the board and just put it on the future agenda.
Okay, so we can do that. I'm going to ask you, Dirk, if you will review our fund balance policy. Because I wasn't sure, because it talks more about the budget than it does about the audit. So I'm not sure where it kind of falls in time-wise, if we're deviating from policy or not. But I'm happy to, do a resolution for that if it makes the most sense.
Well, the question becomes really, what with the budget that was passed, did it have an assumption in that about a transfer that you're not making now? If the budget looks the same before and after the transfer, then council action isn't required. But if the budget made an assumption about a transfer that's not happening, then we do need to amend it, probably with an ordinance, now that I think about it, since the budget itself was passed by an ordinance. So that's the question. It's not about the audit, it's about the budget. Did the budget assume a transfer that you are not making now?
Yeah, but there's not an appropriation for it. So I guess.
So the appropriation isn't from one fund to the other fund? It doesn't say that in there?
Not in the budget and appropriation ordinance, but
All right, so the budget and appropriation ordinance looks the same before or after, whether you do or don't do this transfer. That's what you're saying?
I believe so.
I think that
And no further actions required.
I think we just need to look at that. But I think the point more
Sure.
is, that we would bring it back to the next meeting. I think this is all so new that we will, why don't we look at it and then the board can think about that, the concept. And if we're good with the concept, then we can, bring it back. We don't have to make this decision right now, correct?
Correct.
That sounds good to me.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Mtg. Yes, thank you. I thought that since it was such a huge departure from what the plan was, that maybe a motion wouldn't be a bad plan.
Agreed.
All right, so I guess, is there any, Superintendent DeAngelis, is there any other highlights you want to give us for either for the monthly report by funds, or is it pretty much all kind of subsumed by finance, the general finance report?
Yeah, as I mentioned, and as is highlighted in the written report, as of the end of February, our revenues were ahead of the prior year, and we were continuing to see similar performance. But that is we're now looking at a whole new normal, which we have as another agenda item. So.
All right. Thank you. Well, moving on then to the approval of expenditures. I have my motion here. I move to approve for payment vouchers in the total amount of $905,636.46. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Superintendent DeAngelis, do you have any comments?
This is Commissioner Grau. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Oops, yeah, thanks, Cindy.
No, I don't.
Any commissioner comments or questions? Hearing none, can you call the vote?
Sure. Commissioner Grau?
Yeah.
Commissioner LeDuc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Hi.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
All right. So with that passing, we move on to the projected scenarios to model the potential financial impact. Superintendent DeAngelis?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner LeDuc. So I did prepare a memo explaining the projections that are included in your packet. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things. These projections that are included, they're designed to provide a framework for evaluating our position going forward under these uncertain circumstances. And these are going to continue to evolve as new information is available. And, that's one of the reasons that it's really important that we make sure that we have the time to be confident that our March actual information is accurate. But once that's updated and decisions regarding temporary furloughs are made, we're going to be adjusting these projections accordingly and providing updates for the next board meeting. So we prepared two scenarios. What we're calling the moderate projection. It's been prepared with the assumption that we begin operations mid-June and that we don't have full participation for the remainder of the year. I've detailed the percent of the budget that we're including in the assumptions, but it doesn't go above 75%. We're assuming 75% of budgeted revenues for programs beginning in September and through the end of 2020. Now, the net loss under that scenario is approximately $3.5 million. And again, there's a lot of unknowns here, but what we're trying to do is prepare and make sure that we can plan for what may be to come. So the current measures we've taken to mitigate this likely loss are temporary furloughs of part-time staff and some full-time staff where there is no work that can be performed due to the closure of facilities and no programs. And we're also looking at capital projects that can be deferred if needed. There are also 2 full-time positions in the Buildings and Grounds Department that are vacant currently and are not looking to be filled at this time. We're also starting to look at operational cuts that would be implemented depending on our opening date and the needs of the district. It's also our recommendation to continue closely reviewing expenses that are occurring during the closure as only essential to operate, and again, capital projects that are currently in progress. Again, the assumptions is that we're going to be able to operate our summer programs and facilities, but that we will not be at 100% because we realize that the community is impacted here and may not be able to participate at the level that we're accustomed to. So much depends on our ability to operate in the high volume summer season, and if that changes, we'll have to come back with additional recommendations for further adjustments in order to remain financially viable. So as Gail talked about in Dirk, there is not a lot of relief for park districts at this time. There is this emergency management public assistance, which we'll look into, and we hope that there could be potential for unemployment relief, perhaps in some future legislation, but again, there's just a lot of unknowns at this time. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure you may have some.
This is Commissioner Grau. Questions about the first scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I did have a couple. It looks like we're assuming we're paying part-time for 2 weeks in April.
Yeah, so, and I struggled with this, and I think, and again, as we get, actual information, some of this will evolve, but when our expenses recorded is when that payroll date hits. So we have a payroll date tomorrow, which is in April, which is going to cover the weeks that ended March 27th, where we paid the part-time employees.
Okay, that we voted on last time. So
correct.
We're not asking for additional revenue to pay part-time people. We already approved those 2 weeks at our last special meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I wanted to be clear on your schedules here. because there's a lot of totals and subtotals and whatnot of what our cash balances were looking like. So what is the right one to look at? I want to look at the cash balance, not the fund balance.
Right. So it's fund balance, and then I've backed out investments, our safety net, and the amount we keep for working cash to show what the approximate amount of cash available is expected to be. And I separated the capital fund from the more operating funds.
Okay.
So the remaining available cash balance line, which is kind of 2/3 of the way down before the capital fund beginning balance, is projecting our available cash for operations, essentially.
So is that the million? If I'm looking at the December I'm looking for the December one.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, there's going to be $1,279,000, or there's only going to be. That's where I was confused. Are those only going to be $403,731? Which one of those numbers is it?
403,731. Where's?
At the bottom of the page, go down that column to the bottom.
December.
That's capital. So, no, the $1.2 million would be for operations.
Okay.
If I can just interject kind of a point of information, can you reference, please, the page numbers, just so it's easier to follow this way?
I apologize. That's page 33. If you're looking at the electronic copy, it's 34 of the PDF.
Thank you.
And I think we should announce ourselves in case anyone listens to this so they know who we are. This is Commissioner Grau again saying that we should announce ourselves. I don't remember in your revenue portion of the write-up, the Emerson Lighting affiliate contribution. Is that saying we are moving forward with that project, or what is that?
This is Superintendent DeAngelis. So it was included in the budget in the event we were able to move forward from it. So including it in the budget, we included the revenue source. I was kind of struggling with how, to present this, because I don't think it's likely that it will move forward, but I didn't want to make it so different from the budget that it was confusing. So I just kind of put that resource in at the end, where when we usually look at these, the grants and donations are kind of spread out, and that was included in there. And as I was working on this, I realized that it doesn't make sense to see that we're going to be getting grants and donations as we go along. So I tried to make it a little more realistic, but and I could take that piece out as long as everyone understands, then that's why, the amount is so different.
But you had an expense line with it as well.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it's still there because you can see that I didn't, the capital outlay amount, the total is the same as the budgeted amount.
Sandra, this is Gail Mountcastle. It might be helpful for you to talk about the your memo and how this looks in terms of our fund, our 2 to 4 month, typical. That's how we know, like, we are within the fund balance. That we could try to keep 2 to 4 months of estimated expenses. Why don't maybe that's, to me, that might be an easier summary point that would help.
Yeah. So while we're still on this page 33, I'll point out, maybe I'll just kind of walk through the chart a little bit. We start with the general and recreation beginning fund balances, and then we show all of the receipts by month, all of the expenditures by month, and then there's an ending fund balance. And below that is a line that shows fund balance as a percent of 2020 estimated expenditures. So for each month, it takes that ending fund balance and divides it by the total column of expenditures. So where it shows the 16,110 is our total estimated expenditures for the general and recreation fund. So that percentage is calculated each month, and December is always our low point, and you can see that we're down to 21.5%. So if you go back a couple pages to the memo, explain that per our fund balance policy, the operating balance, our fund balance policy is that we need to keep between 2 and 4 months worth of expenses, which would be the 2 months is 16.7% and 4 months is 33.3%. So that 21.5% is approximately 2.5 months of estimated expenses. Is that helpful?
This is Commissioner Grau again, and does that assume that the $800,000 is put into our cash position from 2019?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Leduc. Thank you for putting together a sobering but helpful memo on the topic. Are there any other Commissioner comments or questions?
Yes, this is Commissioner O'Donnell. So are we moving on to the more dire set of numbers? Because when I look at that, we end December below your 15%. It's like 14.98, and looks like ending cash balance. Ending cash balance is only $84,000. So could you comment on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So again, we put these together as a framework for kind of evaluating our position going forward, because we just really don't know, how long we'll be closed, when we reopen, how great our participation will be, what the impact could be of this new economic situation on tax receipts. So I wanted to kind of have if it gets worse than this, we're really in trouble kind of picture.
Right.
And, what kinds of things are, what assumptions go into this scenario is we're only collecting 75% of taxes going forward. The participation in activities is much slower, as highlighted in the assumptions. So if anyone has any questions, I can go into more detail on this or...
Okay, well, it's Commissioner O'Donnell again. So maybe I can wrap my concern up this way. So, Director Mountcastle, I think that Superintendent DeAngelis has done a nice job putting together a couple of different assumptions. I think that I can't make any better assumptions in this. I think they're appropriate assumptions. but the dire one looks pretty dire. So am I to assume that, and we just don't know, so is it your intention that as we go along, and it looks like it's going to be more like the dire scenario, that we would begin taking actions early on so that we don't get this far down by the end of the year? Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Agreed. That's Sandra. Agree.
Yeah, okay.
This is Commissioner Grau. I think the other thing we're going to have to worry about, and it's probably covered in your more dire scenario, but I worry even if we open back up in the middle of June, that it's going to take people a while to feel comfortable to be in groups again. So even if we open up mid-June, I heard something on the radio the other day that there was a guy who owned a bunch of franchises of Starbucks in China, and it's just been very gradual that things have been picking up again. So even if we open up earlier, and the financial hit may not be as hard, there's also psychological and social implications about what we've been through. Now, you couldn't tell that by looking at our playgrounds, but but the more cautious of us, who have been sitting in their house for a month or something, it's going to take a while for people to feel comfortable in crowds again.
This is Executive Director Mountcastle. I completely agree. And that's why we made the projections at the percentages. I'm very hopeful that we'll get to the moderate, and that still is, that's operating at 65% July through August and 75% September through December. It's my feeling that we will know so much more, come when we open and when that is, right? If we can get open for the summer months, that's going to be our determining factor. And that's when, if and when we'll have to really shift gears and make some changes if that doesn't occur. So this is very, it's a moving target of everything with the situation. And this is something that we are very conscientious of, and we will continue to review and then review with the board because we need to do that. So I think we'll have this on our next next month as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just pointing out it's more than the financial hit. It's also psychological.
Right.
Hit. And I think that these scenarios are really sobering and good for us to look at. And the other thing I worry about that the board can't really help you with is how do you gear up for a summer when you don't know what your summer is going to be? Because I know you do a lot of hiring.
And I think sorry, finish your thought.
No, that's it.
Superintendent Armour may talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of interviewing going on virtually, and we're making sure in our offer letters that they are, I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but we got direction on what to put into the offer letter, that it's contingent on, the situation, not, contingent on us being open and having the business, something to that effect. So.
Well, that's great. You're able to do interviewing.
Yes, but
I know I'm off.
I hope it's my hope that people are a little patient, but we understand the expectation. So we're doing everything we can, and we will, do everything we can to open as best as possible everything that we can when we can.
Thank you.
And if there's no further, sorry, who is this?
Commissioner Harrington. Thanks. I wanted to say thank you to Superintendent DeAngelis and Executive Director Mountcastle. I think these are really good frameworks for many of our discussions to come as the COVID-19 crisis continues and evolves and with hope comes to an end. So I think this gives us a really good framework to begin to start discussing these, and certainly aided in our executive director in making a very difficult staffing decision at this time. So, but based on the numbers and based on estimates and revenue projections as they have halted, I think a responsible decision for the community, and appreciate having this to work with here as we move forward in terms of moderate and stress case scenarios.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Brown. I second that.
All right, and then if that's all, then I'm turning it over to Commissioner O'Donnell for recreation. This is Commissioner
Well,
Liddy.
have we, did we skip over full and part-time employees discussion?
That was removed from the agenda.
Okay, gotcha. I'm looking at an older agenda. Okay, thank you. So I yield the floor to Superintendent Armour to discuss recreation.
Thank you. This is Superintendent Armour. The board report highlights many of the events and programs that we saw in the month of February. We did see growth in many program areas, including preschool, Wildwood, the fitness center, and even in the Oakton skating programs finally, which unfortunately seems irrelevant at this time. But the one thing I did want to point out specifically is that the preschool online registration was very successful and went very smooth. Not in my board report, but I also wanted to talk about some of the things the team has been working on remotely. There's been countless calls to parents, staff, and contractors since the moment we closed with the cancellation of all programs, events, and rentals. Staff has been processing the refunds, tracking revenue loss for programs and those events and rentals. Hopefully you've been enjoying some of the motivational photos, recording, and posts that all departments have been working on for the community and the virtual programming, including the Park Ridge Plays and Place Facebook activities and videos. We did process the installment billing for camps for the patrons who wished for us to do so. We did call each and every one to give them the option. We had planned on having the Beyond the Bell registration on April 1st, but we did postpone that because we didn't have the video tutorial ready and prepared. So we are planning to still have the BTB registration on May 1st, and we don't require a deposit for that, just to keep that moving. We're just finalizing today and tomorrow the summer brochure, and then immediately starting on the autumn brochure. And then, as Director Mountcastle mentioned, we're working on summer preparations, including conducting the phone interviews with potential staff, with the appropriate wording in place for the offer letters. And then getting a jump start on everything for the summer between all of the outdoor facilities, working on manuals or lesson plans, all of the American Camp Association documents, and all of the other things that staff do a little bit closer to the summer season to prepare for this hopefully busy time of the year. So that's just a brief summary of what we've been working on, but I'd be happy to answer questions about any of that or what we have in the February board report as well.
This
Anybody?
is talkative Commissioner Grau again. Thank you for all the work you're doing on so many fronts. It's just mind-boggling. Was it your report that talked about the ALICE training, or was that Sandra's?
This is Sandra. Sorry, that was my report.
Oh, okay. Well, since we're past that time, I'll just talk to you offline. Sorry.
Anybody else have anything for Superintendent Armour?
Well, it's just, the fitness center numbers were going up. Everything was just looking so wonderful. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And boom. All right.
Blink of an eye.
This is Commissioner Harrington. I did want to thank you and the team for all, and I know Margaret's involved and others for the Play and Play programming and the virtual switch here. And I know I've seen some of the recreational staff, many of them, and I've enjoyed seeing them virtually, from air guitaring to working out to so many art projects. But I think it's just another way in which the team and the staff have been very creative and, being there for the Park Ridge community, even though our facilities aren't open. So I wanted to thank them for their creativity and energy.
This is Superintendent Armour. Thank you. I will certainly pass that along. They have been working very hard, and they will certainly appreciate that.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I would yield the floor to Superintendent Leach.
Hi,
Or
Commissioner
Leach, I'm
here.
sorry.
That's fine. I would like to yield the floor over to Superintendent Wolf at this time for the written buildings and grounds report.
Thank you. The written report is on page 44 of the board packet. Did anybody just join or leave the meeting? Okay. Sorry, we heard a noise that someone might have joined the meeting, so we're just checking. Is there anybody on the call still? We just get someone.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Very good. My report's on page 44 of the board report. Similar to April's report, this covers a lot of the activities and things that happened in February and early March. I do want to point out, some of the things also that we've been doing since then and since we've been closed. First and foremost, we had to staff all the early voting, and we're able to keep the early voting location open through all this, as well as we hosted 2 polling places as planned on Election Day. Beyond that, we've been working, we've had a handful of staff working on planning towards essential functions and projects that we have going throughout the district, as well as doing cleaning and disinfecting throughout all of our facilities, and preparing for different opening dates as they've shifted on us over the past few weeks. We have taken a lot of precautions for the staff that we have in, so that we have assigned individual vehicles for each one of the maintenance staff that are working, and we're allowing no more than one person in a vehicle at a time. We continually, every single time we talk to the maintenance staff, we remind them the importance of the social distancing and do not allow them to perform work that requires them to be more than 6 feet together. And even when they're taking lunch and everything, they're expected and reminded that they need to remain 6 feet apart. We've made a lot of shifts to some staffing to help out with different areas to prepare ourselves for a pool season and several other projects that we had planned in facilities. For example, we are moving up the gym floor over at the fitness center, and that work's being completed now. The activity center exterior door was just replaced as planned. The Hodges Park lighting project is moving forward and currently under construction. Still moving forward with the driving range lighting project and coordinating and with structural engineers and people, everything coming in for that project that was already bid and approved. The Centennial Aquatic Locker Room plumbing, as approved at the last board meeting, is moving forward. That's set to begin next week, and staff has been in working diligently on painting those locker rooms since then. Today we had a crew out working and finishing the Centennial ball fields, redoing the surface as we had started last year. We were working to finish that up, and that will be completed tomorrow. We've been continuing to work on plans for Northwest Park baseball field. I'll be asking later for approval on the fitness center HVAC project. Main Park boiler and boiler refurbishment and asbestos abatement. I'm working diligently right now to move up the asbestos abatement so that occurs now while we're shut down to minimize any disruption for patrons. In addition, we've had some planning meetings on Hinckley Park planning, and we're considering holding a virtual stakeholder meeting sometime in the next few weeks. We're also working with very closely with baseball on some upgrades and updates to the Kalina Field that they're paying for, including regrading, some fencing, and some pathways. That's just some of the things that we've been working on. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those and/or anything in my report at this time.
This is Commissioner Leach opening it up. Fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for Superintendent Wolf?
This is Commissioner Grau. It sounds fabulous. It was very sad to read about our ice experiment, but
yeah, we didn't get too far with that this year, but we tried.
But everything else is fabulous that you're doing proactively.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions for Superintendent Wolf? Thank you, Superintendent Wolf. I'm going to go ahead and start with an approval of Centennial Fitness Center HVAC and main park pipe installation bid. I move to approve Core Mechanical, Inc. as the lowest responsible bidder for the Centennial Fitness Center HVAC and main park pipe installation and accept the base bid amount of $52,863 and the alternate number 2 bid amount of $8,350 with a grand total bid of $61,214 and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver the agreement. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Leduc, second.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up for discussion. Eric, Superintendent Wolf, could you give a description of this motion, please?
Yes. This was a project that unfortunately was not planned for, but an issue that has arose since the 2020 capital budget was approved. The ductwork, the HVAC ductwork for the lobby area at the fitness center was run under this concrete slab floor. In late December, early January, we learned that the ductwork under that slab had been compromised and collapsed and had filled with some water. We took measures to remove the water, had the water tested to make sure there was, nothing harmful in there, and, closed that all off and shut down that system. Because of the overall expense to replace the ductwork in the floor and the major disruption that it would be to dig that up, we worked with the engineers to come up with a overhead ductwork system for the lobby. This is to rerun a duct that would go around the lobby and then connect to the existing mechanical unit that's up on the roof in the gym area. And it would also fill the pipe, the collapsed pipe and ductwork in the ground to protect it from future and further collapse. In order to pay for this project, we combined it with a project that we had planned, which was to insulate the boiler pipes under the crawl space at Main Park. Unfortunately, we were not able to fund both of these. We treated the Main Park pipe installation project as an alternate, as we knew that the HVAC for the fitness center was more important. Because we didn't have the budget for both, we identified that we would use the money from the Main Park pipe installation project to help fund this, which is why I've identified that as something we can postpone. In addition, we've talked with staff about the plan for a propane filling station and no longer are recommending moving forward with that for several reasons. And finally, the South Park window replacements, which was just the lower level windows over at South Park. Since we did the main level last year, we decided that, again, this was something that we could postpone and that it was more important that we get the HVAC running properly over at the fitness center. As you can see, these different options for budgets would bring us in just a little bit over budget, but that is if we have to use the $10,000 allowance that's built into the bid. So if not, it could potentially come in $10,000 lower than that, so just a little bit over $70,000 instead. And if that's the case, we can always reevaluate whether or not we have other savings, and we can continue to move forward with the South Park window replacement later in the budget or later in the season, or if we want to keep those savings. So I will also mention that we were able to use a seldom used or not often used opportunity, and after the bids came in, we were able to discuss the price of the alternate two with the bidder, and they were able to match the low bid on that. As you can see, Attorney Price did help us out with this again, make sure that we were in compliance with the law. We were able to find a better price for this project. Finally, this also is something that I immediately jumped on the other day to see if there's any possible way that this work could be completed while we're shut down this month. We're reaching out to the contractor, and as long as we don't have a supply chain issue, we think it's achievable. I'll continue to update the board on that, but we're pushing very hard to see if we can make that happen. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. This is Robert Leach. Thank you, Superintendent Wolf. That was great. Commissioners, any questions or comments for Superintendent Wolf? Hearing none, can I ask Mary Ann to call for a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner LeDuc?
Aye.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Thank you. I have another motion. In this motion, I would like approval of an intergovernmental agreement related to Hodges Park between the City of Park Ridge and the Park Ridge Park District. I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement related to Hodges Park between the City of Park Ridge and the Park Ridge Park District as presented, and to authorize the Executive Director to execute and deliver the agreement. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Tunnell, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Tunnell. Commissioner Leach is going to turn it back over to Superintendent Wolf. I've seen the land movers over there taped off. Can you give us a little bit of description on that project as well, Superintendent Wolf?
Yes, so as I mentioned previously, this project is underway. We did have an agreement, and when we budgeted this project last year, the city had also budgeted money for this project, and this is just the formalization of the agreement, the intergovernmental agreement. There was one that was approved in 1980, in which some work was undertaken at Hodges Park, and the city had retained the responsibility of the maintenance and upkeep for the gas lights. Over the years, some of the other provisions of the agreement had fallen off the wayside, and I was not even aware of them until more recently, but they had always taken care of the gas lights. The gas lights had become a problem. They had become, leaky and unsafe and need of replacement. And the city was no longer interested in being on the hook, so to speak, for maintenance within our park. And so in discussion with them prior to the approval of our capital budget project was that we would do a joint project to complete this work to replace those lights to electric lights, remove the gas lights, and they would no longer have a maintenance responsibility. And so this new intergovernmental agreement basically wipes out those responsibilities that were identified in the 1980 agreement. So this is just the formalization of that, and indicates that that other agreement will become void. I guess Attorney Price, if you've reviewed this, I know if you had any other thoughts on what this does specifically.
No, you got you set that for us very well.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up for questions or comments from my fellow commissioners. This is Commissioner Leach.
Commissioner Grau again. I just was curious about Exhibit A. It's gone. There's no Exhibit A in the new agreement. Are we doing everything now in terms of maintenance, or
correct?
It just
Yeah, correct. When we were looking over this, we were doing everything anyway, except for the maintenance of the gas lights. So, and when we were discussing this last year, I wasn't really in a position that I felt like it would make sense for me to put them back in charge of furnishing and planting and maintaining the flowers in that park. So it just, I mean, it was an agreement that was struck and made sense back in 1980. I didn't really think it made much sense anymore, and so was kind of the basis for this.
interesting.
Other comments or questions from commissioners? Seeing none, Mary Ann, could you call the roll call?
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner LeDuc,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
The last item I have to talk before the board is on the 2020 capital improvements discussion. I will turn this over to Superintendent Wolf or Executive Director Mountcastle to kind of walk us through this topic.
Sure. This is Executive Director Mountcastle. In light of our current recent situation, I had asked staff and asked Superintendent Wolf to lead the process of starting to look at what projects we could defer or we would recommend deferring if we got to that point. I don't, and the board can tell me differently or us differently, but I don't think we're there right now. But we wanted to start to identify projects and start the discussion with the board. So this is just clearly just to show you some examples of projects that we may bring to you in the future. Unless you want to start going down this road right now, I would suggest that this is something that happens at a future meeting, but we just wanted to show you we were thinking about these things, but we're happy to discuss any of these items.
I'd like to take the first comment on this, if that's okay for the board. This is Commissioner Leach. I didn't mention anything relative to Superintendent DeAngelis' report earlier. I thought it was very well done, like most of my peers. What I would suggest is when we're thinking about these projects, if we stop, for instance, I think there's a large ticket pool renovation item that was on there, still recommended, correct? And in that case, and maybe others, at what point in time, if we start to stop projects, what will that net out to the moderate or stress case scenarios the Superintendent DeAngelis provided? So meaning, how much can we save from a potential loss to savings and cash equivalents? At what points and junctures, given no one really understands when this pandemic will end for us?
Sandra, I'm not
This
sure.
is Superintendent DeAngelis. I can speak a little bit to that. I guess I just want to point out that, we are a little different in that our capital fund is funded by a combination of bond proceeds and the funds that we transfer from operations. And to the extent it's funded by bond proceeds, it really has to be spent on capital projects. But since I'm recommending not transferring what we had planned, that we should be looking at areas where we may need to cut if we can't transfer that in the future.
Thank you.
If that's helpful.
So this is Executive Director Mountcastle. I think we're getting feedback from somebody. I don't know if somebody's got on there. It's better. I think that the transfer amount, Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, was around $250,000.
In the original 2019 budget, that's what we had transferred. That's what we had planned for. As we were finishing the 20 budget cycle, we were estimating about closer to $350,000. I think it was 340 something thousand. But as the year end was looking stronger, we thought perhaps we could transfer some more. But in our most recent projections that we looked at during the budget cycle, it was, I think, $344,000.
So I just wanted to point that out, just so the board had a number that we would, if we did not transfer any funds, it would be $344,000. It just kind of as a starting point. But we are, Superintendent Wolf mentioned the projects that we are currently working on, but these other ones, we will keep an eye on this and not start anything. I think it's fair to say, while we assess our current situation. Is that fair to say, Terry, or is in general?
Yeah, in general. I mean, there's projects that if we're going to continue to work towards, we need to continue to work towards them, so we have the time to actually implement them or place orders for whatever.
But the highlighted ones are
the highlighted ones we could postpone and hold off on certainly for a while. Yes.
Again, I think this, we can look at this as a framework and come back to this and put it in the board packet and discuss anytime the board, we would recommend or the board would want us to change course.
So this is Commissioner Leach again. If I can just understand what you're saying, I understand the transfer that Superintendent DeAngelis mentions, but right now, are we effectively stopping by you showing us these projects in yellow, projects that haven't started? Is that what we're saying?
No, we are not saying that. We're saying that these we want you to start thinking about it, and we were putting it out there if you wanted us to. I know we're getting feedback from somebody. I don't know if there's anybody that's got a couple the mute's not on. We were doing so well. I think that our intent tonight, Commissioner Leach, was to show you that we're starting to think about this. I do not recommend at this time that we go down this road, but that we, continue to keep a very close eye on the projects in yellow that we feel like we could delay. And then when we get to it, of course, we're not going to do anything changing course until we talk to the board about it.
I appreciate, this is Commissioner Leach, the last thing I'll say, I'll just appreciate the prudence that you guys will always take on behalf of the taxpayers, the residents, staff, your professionals. You've done a great job through this crisis. The only thing I will suggest is, again, my concern is with the significant and likely drop-off in revenues, therefore cash flow, which will hit liquidity. I would get to different tranches of these projects that we are in a future meeting going to say we're going to stop or pause and continue the conversation. So I really appreciate you putting the list together for us now. But and as I think was mentioned, I would just hope we don't start any large projects because, like Hodges Park, those would be almost impossible to stop, right? So just I want to have more thought and conversation around the liquidity positions over a longer period in a new normal scenario that we're all trying to put our arms around. That's my only cautionary comment as one commissioner. That's all I have.
And that's the reason we put it on there, to get some feedback on, that the board is thinking the same way that we are in terms of these projects. There is one that probably, it's started, but not, there's no shovel on the ground or bids out, but we have time to change course, is the Hinckley project. And I think Superintendent Wolf had said they were going to have a virtual meeting on this project. So I guess that would be one do you need direction on that tonight or at the next meeting? Tonight, he's asking, do you want us to continue on with that project? What the dollar amount on that project, Superintendent Wolf?
We have, it's 150,000 in planning for the 2020 budget, with the anticipation of about a $1.3 million project for next year. Oh, and the grant, we would anticipate applying for the OSLAD grant for up to $400,000 to offset that. So, yeah, so there's a timing issue with that to some degree. We if we continue and have a virtual meeting with the stakeholders, this month, and continue to try to move the project forward, we could be in a position still to apply if the grant cycle opens up. But we're also in a good position now to shelf it if we think prudent, and wait for another year or another cycle on this, or evaluate different portions of it for a different perspective.
This is Commissioner Grau. I see, the value of going either way. I do say if you want to push it off for another year, my community garden is going into year 4, which is trivial, I know. The other thing is that sometimes after a downturn in the economy, you're able to get better value for your money in capital projects. So it's possible some of this could work in our favor for capital. I don't really know, given the sectors that are affected.
And the meeting that we're discussing is a meeting with stakeholders. It's not a full public meeting. It's with baseball and football and one with the church. So it's not a full-fledged public meeting. It's just with the stakeholders. So if we want to move forward with that, and, we can stop it anytime after that if we want to think about that one.
Any commissioners' feedback to, I guess, potential direction on this project?
This is Commissioner O'Connell. Are we able to have the meeting and get kind of just the census from the people involved? Is that possible without the money aspect at this point?
We have an agreement with an architect, landscape architect, to help us through this process, who we're working with. and they were going to be holding stakeholder meetings as well as public meetings and doing some surveying of the community to help us understand how this project could meet the needs of the community, but also to assist us in doing what's required for the OSLAD grant application. We're at a point where they've agreed to go ahead and help us with doing these meetings virtually, where they would run them through a Zoom meeting, essentially, with a handful of people from the baseball affiliate, a handful of board members from the football affiliate, and then we anticipated probably a second separate meeting with a couple of members of the church that are also heavy users of the park and playground over there. So we could certainly move forward with that, just to get the inputs from those stakeholders to help us form and shape the plan and the project and the design. And the next step would be to get public input, which at this point we were looking at a possible online survey. So we could make another stop point at the next point. We're under an existing agreement. Obviously, if we're not continuing with some of those services, we wouldn't be required to pay. So I don't know if that helps answer the question you were asking.
It does. Thank you.
This is Mary Ann. Just to let you know that 8:45, Commissioner Harrington just dropped off the call.
So saying it, unless there's any objection, I would suggest Superintendent Wolf to go ahead forward with the meeting. And then as Executive Director Mountcastle has said, continue with the prudent work that you and staff have already done. Just try to start to look at the capital projects, because there's no doubt that there will be significant financial impacts. And, we appreciate, again, you bringing it into the discussion tonight.
You're welcome.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner, I believe, Grau.
Yes, policy. We have a policy to vote on tonight. Let me get my motion up. The lawn care policy, hopefully you all got a chance to read it. Superintendent Wolf went through and met with the affiliates and updated it accordingly. So let me make the motion and we can have a discussion. I move to adopt the new lawn care application policy, section 3.191 of the administrative policy manual as presented. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. Can I have a second?
Second is Commissioner Tunnell, second.
Thank you. Terry, do you want to just talk over the two minor changes, or?
Yes, thank you. As Commissioner Grau mentioned, after the last meeting in which this was discussed, one of the key points was to make sure that the affiliate groups had reviewed and were comfortable with the language in this policy. I did reach out to baseball, football, and soccer affiliates. There were two minor changes that we made after some discussion. And the first was it's on page 60 in the board packet, and it's the third to last bullet point or paragraph in there where we identify the notification to them. We had previously had 1 day in advance that we would confirm, that we would notify them, and that we would confirm and afterwards with email that the application was actually made. And in addition, we had not indicated that we would let them know what product we intended to use. So we added an extra day, and then we also added that we would let them know what product we intend to use, so that even though all products that we will use are safe, this would allow someone to make their own personal decision, and that it could be communicated out through the affiliate for people to make those decisions.
Okay, are there any questions or discussion on this motion?
Commissioner O'Donnell, at the end of this thing, the last bullet item, and then not the one before it, but the one before that, it looks like they say the same thing pretty much. So why do we have two paragraphs? They both talk about the need to notify 2 days in advance and confirming. So I guess I don't understand the need to have this last one.
Yeah, initially because they had two different time frames, we probably could eliminate the second one. But when we did go through this, we wanted to make it pretty clear and point out when and how we would deal with the exceptional quality biosolids that would be used. And so that it's clear that when those are made, that's actually a different process, a different way that we're going to do some signage, and that, I guess, just to make sure that it was clear. So it could be removed if that's the desire of the board.
This is Commissioner Grau. I think they should be treated separately, but that's just my opinion. Anyone else have an opinion on that?
I think that this is Commissioner Coyne. I think they should be treated separately, and actually removing that at this point could appear to the affiliates that we're trying to gloss over the EQ biosolids use, and I don't think that they would particularly like that. So it's better that it's here and clear.
Commissioner Leach also concurs with Commissioner Grau.
Any other discussion? Okay, Mary Ann, can you call the vote?
Sure. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner LeDuc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Abstain.
Commissioner Harrington?
Okay, that concludes my report, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Coyne for intergovernmental.
No report. Any questions?
Commissioner Coyne, this is Executive Director Mountcastle. I actually have something to add to this, and I realized I will also include you in the communication next time. I got contacted, I'm not even sure when, sometime this week, by Superintendent Wallace at 207 to join a Maine Township official meeting over the COVID-19 crisis. And there was representatives on the on the call from the city, including police, fire, and the mayor, the Lutheran General representatives, District 63, District 64. There was Maine Village of Niles, River Trails, several representatives just giving reports on what everybody was doing and what the status is. So I was very happy that was organized, as I think it's a very important that we all are aware and communicating and sharing communications. So I will, if you would like, Commissioner Coyne, I will put you on that list if you feel like you want to attend those future meetings. I think they said, they won't have one probably for the next couple weeks or so, but I'll add you to that distribution list if you would like.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to communications. Oh, sorry. Was someone else speaking? All right, this is Commissioner Grau. We'll move on to communications and correspondence. Is there any to report?
Nothing formal to report.
That's leading.
Well,
okay,
we've had several communications about, closing issues, but nothing, formal that we put in the packet.
Okay. Is there any new business? Okay, hearing none, I move to adjourn the meeting of the Park Board of Commissioners. Can I have a second?
Commissioner Leduc, second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.